The number is $1,936,900. That is the exact threshold per the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances to be in the top 10% of American households by net worth. Not 3 million, not 5 million, 1.9. And according to Charles Schwab's 2025 Modern Wealth Survey, Americans believe you need 2.3 million to be considered wealthy. That is a gap of roughly $400,000 between the actual finish line and where most people think it is. Which means a meaningful slice of this country is already sitting in the top 10% of wealth, and they have no idea because the benchmark in their head is wrong by $400,000. I am going to show you 3 specific signs that put you in that category. Not vibes, not a general feeling, actual behavioral and financial markers that correlate directly with the Federal Reserve's percentile data. By the end of this video, you are either going to feel significantly better about where you are, or you are going to feel genuinely annoyed that you have been undervaluing yourself financially for years. Either outcome is productive. There is something broken about the way most people in this country understand their own wealth, and the break happens slowly, quietly, over decades, in a way that is almost invisible once you understand the mechanism. Let me show you what I mean. Before I get into the 3 signs, there is one thing I need to set up, because it runs through everything else in this video. I call it the wrong scoreboard problem. Your entire financial life, the scoreboard you have been trained to watch is the income scoreboard. Your salary, your raise, your bonus, your W-2 number, that scoreboard updates every 2 weeks when your paycheck hits. It is immediate, visible, emotionally satisfying when it goes up, and genuinely painful when it does not. And it is almost completely irrelevant to whether you end up in the top 10% of wealth. The wealth scoreboard is a different game with different rules. It moves slowly. It updates at 3 in the morning while you are asleep. A 12% annual return on a $400,000 retirement account added $48,000 to your net worth last year, and you probably did not register it because nothing showed up in your checking account. The house you bought in 2014 quietly accumulated $250,000 in equity while you were watching your W-2. Your 401k balance crossed some threshold you had set as a milestone and then kept going, and you noticed it for maybe 3 minutes before closing the app. The wealth scoreboard does not care how fast you drive. It cares how long you have been driving. And the Federal Reserve's own research is explicit about this. The Survey of Consumer Finances data shows that savings rate is a stronger predictor of long-term wealth percentile than income level, once you are past the point of covering basic needs. Not your salary, your savings rate. The wrong scoreboard has been sitting in your pocket, unlocked, running a game you have been playing without knowing it. In a few minutes, I am going to show you something about what happens to people who are in the top 10% or within striking distance of it that quietly drains them back out. It involves a 1% number that sounds trivial and is very much not. But first, here is why your perception of your own wealth is almost certainly wrong and why that costs you money in real time. Sign 1. You feel middle class. And you probably are not. Let me tell you about an Ameriprise financial survey from a few years ago. They asked investors who had $1 million or more in investable assets how they would classify themselves socioeconomically. 60% said upper middle class, 31% said middle class. Only 8% said wealthy. These are millionaires. Actual millionaires with 7 figures in investable assets, not counting home equity, calling themselves middle class. 8% said wealthy. That is the wrong scoreboard in action, in its purest form. The psychological mechanism behind this is well documented in behavioral finance. We calibrate our sense of financial position not against the population at large, but against the people immediately around us. Your reference group is your neighborhood, your profession, your friend group, your LinkedIn feed. If you are surrounded by people who earn more than you, drive nicer cars, take more expensive vacations, and talk casually about things that cost money, you feel average even when you are not. The data does not agree with the feeling, but the feeling wins. Here is the data. The Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the most comprehensive household wealth data set in the country, shows a median American household net worth of $192,700. That is the 50th percentile. Half of American households have less than that. Not most, half. If you have $250,000 in net worth right now, you are in the upper half of America by wealth. If you have 400,000, you are in roughly the top 30%. If you have 600,000, you are knocking on the top 20%. The threshold that feels so impossibly distant, the top 10%, starts at 1.9 million in the Federal Reserve's data, but the entire distribution below that is much lower than people assume. Think about what the bottom looks like. The Federal Reserve data shows the lower 50% of American households hold less than 3% of total national wealth. 3%. 50% of households. The middle is not where most people think it is. The actual middle of the wealth distribution is closer to the bottom than the top, which means the distance from middle to top 10% is shorter than it appears once you account for what you actually have. And here is a number that has not moved the way you think. A net worth of $1 million placed someone in the top 5% of Americans in the late 90s. According to a Fortune analysis from April 2026, citing research from financial writer Nick Maggiulli, that same threshold today places you in the top 20%. The goalpost moved substantially. The number that once meant top 5 now means top 20. If you are approaching or past $1 million in net worth, and you probably have a better shot at that than you think, you are in a very different position than you feel like you are in. You think the problem is that you have not earned enough. The actual problem is that you have not calculated what you already have. And this distinction costs money. People who think they are in the middle of the wealth distribution make middle-class financial decisions. They take on car payments they could avoid. They accept fee structures they never examine. They delay retirement planning conversations because those feel like problems for later, for when they are actually wealthy, which they are not, except that they are. The misperception is not just emotionally uncomfortable, it is financially expensive. By the way, hit subscribe if you like this kind of content, because the algorithm is not going to reliably show you my next video otherwise, and I do not particularly enjoy making things that disappear into the void. Now, before sign 2, let me introduce someone I want to follow through the rest of this video. His name is Dave. He is 47 years old, lives in Columbus, Ohio, works as a project manager, earns $112,000 a year. He bought his house in 2014 for $290,000. He contributes 12% of his salary to his 401k, has a small brokerage account he opened during COVID, and carries no credit card debt, one car loan, about $4,000 remaining. He considers himself solidly middle class. On a good day, upper middle class. We're going to check back in with Dave later and run his actual numbers. His reaction is instructive. Sign 2. Your home has been building wealth on your behalf without asking permission, and you have not added it to your net worth calculation. As of mid-2025, per Cotality, formerly CoreLogic, the average American mortgage holder has approximately $307,000 in home equity. That is the third highest quarterly total in the history of their dataset. Total U.S. home equity, as of the second quarter of 2025, stood at $17.5 trillion. The average homeowner who has been in their home since before the pandemic has seen that number move dramatically, and most of them have not updated their internal net worth estimate to reflect it. Here's a real-world illustration of what this looks like. A family bought a house in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2012 for $220,000 with a 20% down payment, $44,000 out of pocket. They have been paying down that mortgage for 13 years. According to the Federal Housing Finance Agency's House Price Index, home prices in Charlotte more than doubled between 2012 and 2024. Their home is now worth somewhere around $480,000. After 13 years of mortgage payments, they owe approximately $135,000 on the loan. That is $345,000 in equity, grown from a $44,000 initial investment. They have generated over $300,000 in wealth from a down payment while paying to live in their own house. And when you ask them how their finances are going, they say, fine, we have a good mortgage rate. They have not connected the dots. The wrong scoreboard is running. They see their paycheck. They do not see the wealth. This is not a rare story. It is the median story for American homeowners who bought before 2020. The pandemic era appreciation was extraordinary, above historical averages, not sustainable at that pace. And the people who owned homes during that window received an enormous and largely unrequested wealth transfer. Most of them spent it. Some of them renovated their kitchens. And aside, I have a friend who used his home equity to fund a kitchen renovation in 2021. New countertops, the whole thing. He took out a home equity line for $85,000 and spent every cent on it. His mortgage payment went up. The renovation added maybe $30,000 to the appraised value. He essentially borrowed $55,000 from his own future net worth to upgrade countertops. He posts photos of those countertops on Instagram regularly. The wrong scoreboard is very aesthetic. The point is not that home equity is automatically a good investment or that you should never use it. The point is that you need to count it correctly. The Federal Reserve counts it. The survey that generates the top 10% threshold counts it. If you are doing your own net worth calculation and stripping out your home because it does not feel like real money, you are systematically underestimating your position. Practical implication. If you've owned your home for more than 7 years and have not pulled a current estimate of your equity current appraisal or Zillow estimate minus your mortgage balance, do it today. Pull a number, then add it to your investment accounts. You may be significantly surprised where the total lands. Here's where it gets really interesting and where sign 2 connects to the bigger picture. The Federal Reserve data, again, shows that for middle-income families, broadly defined as households earning between $56,000 and $170,000, home equity makes up the bulk of their total household wealth, not their 401k, their house, the house they live in, the asset they tend to think of as a place to sleep rather than a financial instrument. The biggest wealth-building engine most Americans have is the one they walk past every morning to get to the car. Stay with me, because sign 3 is where the forward-looking math gets genuinely uncomfortable in the best way. Sign 3. Your savings rate is above 15%, and that is a more powerful indicator of top 10% membership than your income. This one is about behavior, not balance sheets. It is about a number that most people have never calculated, and that turns out to be the single most predictive variable in the Federal Reserve's own wealth data. Fidelity Investments reported in early 2025 that the total savings rate among their retirement plan participants, employee contributions plus employer match, reached 14.3% in the first quarter, the highest on record in their data, which covers 24.5 million participants. Vanguard's 2025 How America Saves report, pulling from nearly 5 million participants, showed average employee contribution rates of 7.7% in 2024. That is the average. The median is lower. If your savings rate, counting all forms of savings and investment, not just your 401k, is above 15%, you are running above the average of one of the largest retirement data providers in the country. You are not in the middle. You are in the upper behavioral tier. Now here is why that matters more than your income. Run the math with me. A household earning $95,000 that saves 15% is putting away approximately $14,200 per year. At a 7% average annual return, which is conservative relative to long-term S&P 500 averages, net of inflation over 25 years, that is roughly $950,000 from savings alone, before home equity, before any employer match I have not accounted for, before any inheritance or windfall, just the regular deposits, compounding. Now run the same math for a household earning $120,000 but saving 8%. They are putting away $9,600 per year. At the same 7% return over 25 years, they finish with approximately $640,000. The higher earner, with the weaker savings rate ends up with $300,000 less over a quarter century. Same investment returns, just a different relationship with spending. $300,000 gone. Not to taxes, not to bad investments, just to spending habits. The income scoreboard said they were winning. The wealth scoreboard told a different story. And this is the reversal most people never see. You think the problem is that your income is not high enough. The actual problem for most people in the 30 to 55 range with stable employment is that their savings rate is too low and their lifestyle inflation has been too aggressive. Salary went up, car got nicer, house got bigger, savings rate stayed the same. The income scoreboard went up, the wealth scoreboard barely moved. The behavioral tell for someone who is heading toward the top 10% is boring. They drive cars that are older than the ones their neighbors drive. They live in a house they could afford comfortably 8 years ago, not one that just barely clears approval. They do not talk about money at parties. They have an automated transfer that moves money to investment accounts every month before they see it. They have turned financial discipline into a process so automatic that it requires no willpower anymore. And because it is invisible, they frequently do not register themselves as doing anything remarkable. They feel middle class because they spend like middle class, but their net worth is running well ahead. Here's a second comedic aside. The colleague who showed up to the company holiday party last year talking about his options in the tech startup that was definitely about to IPO, that guy is very exciting to talk to. The woman in the corner who has been maxing her Roth IRA every year for 11 years and is now worth about $740,000 has nothing interesting to say about finance. She is thinking about whether to rebalance into more international exposure. Nobody is asking. The wrong scoreboard is fascinating. The right one is boring and effective. Now here's the part I promised earlier. And this is where I need you to pay close attention because it affects everyone who is in or approaching the top 10%, the fee leak. Here is the honest confession that never makes it into a standard retirement calculator. If your assets under management are being charged a 1% annual fee, which is the industry standard rate for most financial advisors working with portfolios under $1 million, you are not paying what you think. You are paying. On a $500,000 portfolio at 7% annual returns, a 1% advisory fee costs you about $2,500 this year. That sounds manageable. What it actually costs you after compounding over 20 years is more than $330,000. You paid $2,500. The true cost of that fee was $16,000 in forfeited compounding every year. But let's go further. An investor who starts with $100,000, contributes $1,000 per month for 40 years, earns a 9% gross return, and pays no fees, finishes with approximately $7.2 million, the clean index fund path. The same investor with a 1% advisor fee, net return dropping to 8%, finishes with $5.3 million. That is $1.9 million gone, not to the market, to fees. Add 1% in actively managed fund expense ratios on top of the advisor fee, which is completely normal for anyone who has not looked at their fund costs recently, and the net return drops to 7%. You finish with $3.9 million. Total damage from 2% in annual fees across 40 years, $3.3 million. Same contributions, same time horizon, same market performance, just fees. This is not an argument against ever using a financial advisor. Some advisors provide genuine value, particularly in tax planning, estate structuring, and the behavioral coaching that stops you from panic selling in a downturn. That kind of guidance is real and quantifiable, but you should know what it costs in compounding terms. And you should know whether your fund holdings are generating equivalent additional return to justify those fees, because statistically, the overwhelming majority of actively managed funds do not outperform their index benchmarks over long time horizons after fees. The fix is low drama and low effort. Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab all offer broad market index funds with expense ratios below 0.1%. If you log into your 401k today and move your holdings to the lowest cost index options in your plan's fund menu, you have done the most impactful thing you can do to preserve your compounding trajectory. It takes 25 minutes It does not require timing the market, picking stocks, or making any complex financial decision. You are not leaving the market, you are staying in it at a lower toll. Now here's the part I said you should be annoyed about. The people who are closest to the top 10%, people like Dave, people who have been quietly doing the right things for years, are also the most likely to be paying this fee without realizing it. Because they are the ones with enough accumulated assets to have been handed off to a managed account. The people who have nothing to manage do not get charged 1% to manage it. The people who have actually built something are the targets. The more you have done right, the more you are in the crosshairs of the fee structure. Here is where Dave lands. Let me run his actual numbers. His house in Columbus, Ohio, bought in 2014 for $290,000. Modest appreciation in a mid-sized Midwestern market, conservatively worth about $470,000 today. Remaining mortgage after 12 years, approximately $155,000. That is $315,000 in home equity. His 401k, 12 years of contributions at 12% of $112,000 with employer match in a target date fund. Based on Fidelity's data for consistent Gen X contributors, a reasonable estimate is around $330,000. Small brokerage account, $38,000. Savings account, $22,000. Minus the $4,000 car loan balance. Total, $701,000. Dave is in the top 22% nationally by net worth for all ages combined. For the 45 to 54 age bracket specifically, where the comparison is most meaningful, the median net worth is $247,000. Dave has nearly 3 times the median for his age group. He feels middle class. He is nowhere near the middle. If Dave's savings rate stays at 12%, his house appreciates at a conservative 2% annually, and his retirement accounts compound at 7%, which is below historical S&P 500 averages. His net worth crosses $1.5 million in 6 years. He crosses the overall top 10% threshold within 11 years of normal behavior, without doing anything different, just staying consistent. The wrong scoreboard told Dave he was average. The wealth scoreboard has been quietly building something else the whole time. Here is the practical framework. 3 things you can do before this video ends. Number 1, run a real net worth calculation. Not a mental ballpark, a spreadsheet. Pull your home's current estimated value from Zillow or Redfin, subtract your exact mortgage balance from your last statement, add every retirement account, 401k, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, old employer, plans you forgot to roll over. Add every brokerage account, every savings account, every checking account. Subtract every remaining debt mortgage excluded since you already accounted for equity. But car loans, student loans, credit card balances, anything, get one number. Then look up the Federal Reserve's percentile tables for your age bracket. They are publicly available on the Federal Reserve website and on DQYDJ. You might be surprised where you land. Number 2, calculate your savings rate. Add up everything you deposited into retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, high yield savings, and any other investment vehicle in the last 12 months. Divide by your gross income. If that number is above 15, you are in the upper behavioral tier for wealth accumulation. If it is below 10, the compounding gap I showed you is running against you daily, and raising it by 3 to 5% would be the highest leverage financial move available to you, more impactful than picking better stocks, timing the market, or chasing any investment trend. Number 3, check your expense ratios. Log into your 401k or brokerage provider, navigate to your holdings, and find the expense ratio for each fund. Add them up as a weighted average. If your blended expense ratio is above 0.5%, you are paying meaningfully more than you need to. If it is above 1%, the compounding math over 20 years is genuinely material. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in forfeited growth. You can fix this in under 30 minutes without changing your asset allocation strategy. Move to the lowest cost index option in each asset class your plan offers. Done. None of this is complicated. None of it requires earning more money, taking on more risk, or making dramatic financial decisions. It requires looking at the right scoreboard, the one that measures what you have actually built, not what your paycheck says you earned last month. The sign of someone in the top 10% is not a big house, or a fancy car. Those are income signals. The sign is years of consistent behavior, automated, boring, running in the background, compounding while you are doing other things. The guy at the barbecue with the flashiest financial stories might be carrying $60,000 in consumer debt and essentially no savings. He is winning the visible game. He is losing the actual one. The person next to him who changed the subject, who has been maxing their 401k for 11 years and owns a house that has tripled in equity since they bought it, that person has probably already crossed the threshold they thought was decades away. Here's the thing about the top 10%. It is not a vault. It is not a destination you announce. More than 50% of Americans will find themselves in the top 10% of income earners for at least 1 year of their working lives. But staying there, building durable, compounding, weather-resistant net worth that holds through market corrections and job disruptions requires watching the right scoreboard consistently for years. The people who do it look ordinary from the outside. They drive ordinary cars and shop at ordinary stores and occasionally complain about the same things you do. They just never stop contributing, never stopped compounding, and never traded their boring financial life for a more exciting one. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. Look at the right scoreboard. The other one is just entertainment.